All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming on short notice. This is regarding what happened Sunday morning. First, I want to start out with, I am so sick of gun violence, but that's nothing new, right? We have to say that every time. I'm angry. As a mayor and as a father of two young people in the same age range as those who were wounded and killed the other night, this infuriates me. Early Sunday morning, we saw in Lansing what we've been seeing nationwide. Less now since the pandemic, but still seeing it. Our youth armed to the teeth shooting at each other when they have beef with each other, and it has to stop. First, I want to thank all of those that jumped in immediately to help. Lansing Police certainly, and we'll get into that. Advance Peace, Pray, Lansing Empowerment Network and Lansing 360, and so many others who we don't know about, but they acted to help. All trying to prevent any further violence and concerned about the impacts of all of this on our youth. I want to assure all of our residents that this was an isolated incident and that Lansing Police are all over this and using every tool at their disposal. I'm calling on a whole variety of people to help out. I call on our federal government to step up and provide us with the resources to do more. I want to thank President Biden's team for reaching out yesterday and offering up resources from the White House Office on Gun Violence. We'll be having more conversations on this, and I've taken them up on their offer. And I've spoken to Congresswoman Slotkin and Senator Peters' offices as well. But Congress can't sit on their hands any longer and say that people kill people, not guns. Kids have been fighting forever. That's not new. They have arguments or beef or whatever you want to call it. But now they have access to guns, and they are using them to tragic ends. That's the difference. That's the new piece of the equation, and our federal government needs to protect our safety and our future as much as they protect the Second Amendment. Guns empower youth to act deadly and are the leading cause of death for young people. These are our youth, our children, our future. Congress must act and pass common sense gun reforms. I also call on our state government to do more. I am extremely thankful for the safe storage and red flag laws. These will make sure that we have some of the tools needed, and we'll use them here if we can. But we need to do more to ensure that kids can't get guns. There needs to be greater consequences for those that lose their gun or allow their gun to be stolen. If the state doesn't want to do this, then let the cities do it with local control. And if people don't like stronger gun laws, then they can vote with their feet and live somewhere else. Lansing needs the tools to keep the bad actors out of our city. And we need more money for cops. We need the Violent Crime Revenue Sharing Act and the $3 million that passed the House so we can use for 15 more police officers. I'll also use those dollars for more patrols and gun violence interrupters. And I'll use those dollars to monitor the cameras that we already have in real time, similar to what's done in Detroit. Real-time monitoring of cameras will allow the dispatch of officers as soon as big crowds appear and will prevent violence in the future. If there are Republicans who won't vote for these additional dollars because it gives too much money to the cities, then you better never criticize our cities and urban cores for crime. And if there are Democrats who want police reform first, then you better talk to residents who want their safety ensured. It's time for the state to help. And we're going to do more here in Lansing. I call on us to do more here in Lansing. We'll do a better job. We know we have limited tools combined with over 100,000 calls for police service each year. But we need to do what we can do to address these violent situations. And we'll work with others to do it, whether Advance Peace or Lansing Empowerment Network and Lansing 360 or Pray or anyone else doing the work to prevent gun violence in the future. I'll be making a few changes here in Lansing. I've talked to our chief, and we will be aggressively enforcing the curfew ordinance that's on the books. If you are 12 years old or younger, our ordinance says you are home by 10 p.m. If you are 16 years or under, or 16 to 13, our ordinance says you are home by midnight. Now, we don't have the police officers or staffing to patrol the roads just for this, but officers that come across these youth or receive complaints will enforce the ordinance. We've heard in the past that people don't like enforcement of the curfew ordinance because kids need a place to go. While I agree that youth needs things to do as alternatives to violence, being on the streets or in our parks after midnight is not the answer, and they can and will be moved out of the park and cited with civil infractions if they are caught violating the ordinance. Speaking of parks, our parks close at dusk. Now, Rotary Park, because it's in a business district and people go there at night to enjoy Lansing, closes later. But lights will be turned off. At the park at midnight. Signs will be put up, and anyone in Rotary Park can and will be cited or moved. No good comes of any gathering in Rotary Park after midnight, and our youth needs to head home under ordinance by midnight. Also know that we have cameras at Rotary Park and in many of our parks. We're reviewing them now for what happened Sunday morning. For those that would do harm, know that we are watching, we will find you, and you will face the consequences. We'll have police increase patrols to known hotspots and hangouts. Due to high call volumes, police patrol time is narrow, but police will be looking at public places like Rotary Park and other parks to make sure that people aren't there. And they will cite people and move them out if anyone is found gathering at a park or a known hotspot. We'll aggressively go after the perpetrators of these shootings. They came armed and ready for a fight. We will find these people and send charges to our county prosecutor or our U.S. attorney, whichever is the most appropriate. Both have ensured that they will use every tool to go after those responsible for gun violence, and they will face stiff consequences for their actions. And if the guns used were illegal, which I assume they were, then we'll find out whose guns they were, and we'll aggressively bring any charges possible on them as well. If you are an irresponsible gun owner and your gun was used in this gunfight or any gunfight, you will be held accountable. So gun owners, be responsible. Lock up your gun. Don't allow it to be lost or stolen, or you will face consequences allowable by law. We will do all we can locally with the tools we have, and I'll continue to ask for more help from any and all sources. We need to get the guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. Arguments cannot turn into gunfights. This has to stop. We have a list of things that we called for a few months ago when we weren't in this kind of a situation. Scott Bean has that list of things that we called for with state and federal government, and he's happy to provide that to any member of the media. Now I will ask Assistant Chief Backus to update on the situation from Sunday morning.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. My name is Rob Backus. I'm Assistant Chief for the Lansing Police Department. I'm going to provide a timeline and an update on our investigation. So first off, we were dispatched to the 300 block of Riverfront Drive or Rotary Park at approximately 2:50 a.m. in the early morning hours of Monday, May 27th. Our first officers arrived on scene there at approximately 2:54 a.m. They saw a large crowd gathered around one subject specifically who was on the ground. When they made contact with that subject, they saw that the person had a very serious injury, and they began life-saving measures with CPR. After several minutes of conducting CPR, they picked up the injured subject and they brought him to the roadway so they could meet with the Lansing Fire Department to have that person transported to Sparrow as soon as possible. Additional officers responded to the scene. They located several more victims, and we began providing aid. Ultimately, LFD provided treatment and transported the majority of the victims in this case. 3 of our victims self-transported to Sparrow for their wounds, and 1 of the victims was transported to Sparrow by one of our officers in a patrol car. Our deceased victim, in this case, the victim of our homicide, has been identified as 17-year-old male Kylie Owens of Lansing. Our other victims include a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old male who are still in critical condition due to their injuries, as well as 2 16-year-old and 2 18-year-olds with non-life-threatening injuries. What we know so far about this event is that this was not a planned event. It's something that happened because of people sharing the event and location through social media throughout the night. We have different estimates on what the total size of the crowd were, anywhere from 50 to 100 people, from our witnesses and from the officers who responded. We believe that the motivation of this shooting stemmed from 2 groups who were in attendance who had a standing feud with each other. And we know that there were multiple firearms that were used in this event, in this shooting. We did recover 1 firearm at the scene, but based on our investigation, we do not believe this is one of the firearms that was used in the shooting. We believe that some, if not all, of the victims were unintended targets, and it was a result of people firing into the crowds without any regards to the lives of the other people, the large crowd there. We do have public cameras in this area that did capture some of the event, and there's also camera footage from many of the surrounding buildings and businesses in the area. We're still collecting all that, and we're still reviewing that for additional information to help us. Prior to the shooting call at 2:50, we had 1 call of a suspicious person, which was just before midnight, between 11:30 and midnight p.m. So we had no knowledge of this large group that had gathered at on Riverfront. When the shooting happened, we immediately put out a request to our surrounding agencies, a request for mutual aid, and we got many additional law enforcement to respond from our sheriff's departments, our local police departments, and the Michigan State Police. We're very thankful for their response. We would not have been able to manage a very large scene, which was not only at the park, but at the hospital, and dealt with a lot of people who were in attendance and the families that showed up afterwards. Just prior to this event, our officers were actually on a different shooting call that was on the east side. So once officers were able to respond there and ensure that there was no victims in that shooting, then they were able to respond to the riverfront. We do not have a suspect identified in this case. I will share with you that our Detective Bureau, our Violent Crime Initiative, our patrol officers, our state and local partners are working diligently around the clock right now. We've developed a number of leads, and we are hopeful that through those leads, we will identify the people responsible for this crime. We are in communication with the Lansing School District today. We are ensuring that we know that our victims attended Lansing schools, they do attend Lansing schools, and we want to ensure that both the schools and the students are safe today and in the coming days. A little bit about the area. We know that in the past 2 months, we have not had calls at Rotary Park or Riverfront about large groups or gatherings. We've had approximately 9 calls. Those calls have been mainly for a suspicious vehicle or a suspicious person who was there after hours. We had 1 call of a shot being fired in that area in the past 2 months. We weren't able to actually find any evidence of a shooting happening there. We know that from these events, our community is tired of these violent crimes occurring. And we have seen evidence that our community specifically is ready to do something about this. We've seen efforts focusing on violence interruptions, and we have a new initiative with the Lansing 360 group that meets regularly several times a month that brings together our nonprofit groups, our law enforcement, our community stakeholders, our faith-based leaders, and it's all about finding solutions to our violent crime. We saw them in action yesterday, and I expect them to be present in the coming future as we start dealing with the aftermath of this event. But what we need right now is we need our citizens and our community to come forward with more information. We know that in this day and age, there's people that have videos on their cell phone, pictures, and we need that shared with us. We also know that with a group that was so large that there's a lot more witnesses that have not come forward. So we're calling on those people, but more specifically, we're calling on the parents who have this information, who know their children were there, who are getting this information now after hours and days after the event has happened, that they need to contact us. And you can contact us through our general number for our investigations division, but you can also contact us on social media, and you can contact Crime Stoppers also. The time is right now to do what's right, and we know that with our community involvement, that we will be able to identify the people responsible and hold them accountable. Chief?
Well, not much more needs to be said than was said by Chief Backus and the mayor, but I will go into a little bit of detail on what we're going to do moving forward with the police department over the summer. We know that we have a problem we have to address, and how we're going to do it is multifaceted. We were going to get into some more special events, special enforcement efforts. Mayor mentioned that we're going to start taking more enforcement on curfew. We are going to be taking more enforcement on gatherings in parks and in parking lots. I've been, met with criticism in the past about breaking up these events because people need a place to congregate, but that time has passed. We are going to take enforcement on this, and we're going to be very aggressive on it. Thank you again, Chief Backus mentioned our disruptors, Lansing 360. Our clergy members who have been very, very vocal and supportive of us in these efforts. We will be dedicating more patrols to these dedicated in these identified areas of issue that we have in the city. We mentioned cameras. We will be adding additional cameras with people monitoring these cameras as soon as possible. I also want to, as a reminder, remind everybody out there that we just stood up with our Assistant U.S. Attorney last week about federal prosecution when involving crime guns. I just want to remind everybody out there that decides to pick up a gun to solve a problem that those people will come and we will hold you accountable for it. I want to thank, too, the many people that reached out, the people, Emily Devendorf, Alyssa Slotkin, Gary Peters, the school district, Prosecutor Dwayne, Assistant U.S. Attorney Mark Totten, Sarah Anthony, several of our council members. As you can see, these people are reaching out to myself and the mayor because they're concerned and they're tired of it. And those people are willing and have offered up resources to help us by any means necessary, and we will take them up on it. But here's the bigger piece of it is, and Chief Backus touched on it a little bit, is there were a lot of people there, 50 to 100 people, some young people. So at this point, you have to make a decision. What side of this are you going to be on? Are you going to be on the side that doesn't say anything, or are you going to take a stand so we stop this nonsense? And he touched on it too about the parents. What side of this are you going to be on? So I call on the kids and the young adults that were there to make a decision and pick a side. And I also call on the parents and friends that know about what happened there. What side of this are you going to be on? Because you're either going to do something about it and help us out, or you're going to sit back and this is going to continue. That's all I have to say. Questions?
What's spelling for Kylie's name? I have it.
She'll get that to you.
All right.
Great.
The two, you mentioned the victims weren't necessarily intended targets. I'm wondering, were they there as part of the groups, do you know, or what do you know about?
We don't know who was there and who came there. The details are still, we're developing that and building that through the investigation. But I can tell you that this is another example of people showing up and just with no accountability and no care of consequence, firing cowardly into a group of people with no one necessarily an intended target. And if they did have an intended target, maybe they hit them, maybe they didn't. And that's how these people get hit and injured in mass numbers.
Did the gathering start, from what you understand, as an intended beef, or did it become that? Like you mentioned the social media posts through the night. What can you tell me about it?
We believe right now is that this just happened as a gathering of teenagers, and that when two sides showed up, they were the ones that brought the problems. A very small percentage of this group had guns and caused this problem. The vast majority of people there were not there because there was some type of arranged fight. This was just a social gathering that was shared through social media.
Can we say how many shots were fired? And then the second question would be, I had heard that there may have been the shear clip in to turn an automatic or semi-automatic into an automatic pistol. Do we know if that is the case?
We can't confirm right now how many total shots were fired, and we also can't confirm what type of weapons and the specifics about the weapons were involved in this.
Do you have a specific number of suspects that you're searching for?
Like I said, we can say right now that there were two different firearms, evidence of two different firearms at the scene, but not more than that. There could potentially be more, can't say.
Were both of those firearms discharged that you know of?
Yes, that's how we're determining from the shell casing that we found that we can confirm there was two different types of firearms used.
The curfew enforcement, could you talk more about that, when that will begin, and what people under 16 can look forward to?
Immediately. That will begin immediately. There's not going to be any pause in that. This is why we're doing this press conference, to put everybody on notice that starting right now, this summer, we are not going to have any leniency on our curfew or parks after dark or any of those ordinances that we can take enforcement on. We have to find a way to curb this, and this is one of our efforts.
I'll add in, this is an ordinance that's been on the books. We have tried to be lenient because the questions were, can youth gather and what makes sense and what doesn't. But there's no reason for youth to be gathering after midnight at this point. We're going to enforce the ordinance, and honestly, we'll probably take a look at it and see are there other tweaks that should be made. I've had several council members reach out who said, please let us know how we can help. The chair of the Public Safety Committee, Chairman Cost, our council leadership, Councilman Garza and Councilman Hussein, They've all reached out to say, what can we do? So council is ready and willing to look at that and to adjust, as are we. But at this point, we've tried to be good and to be lenient, but that ends, and LPD will be enforcing that as they come across these situations.
Of what you've been able to review so far with the cameras, what did they capture?
They did capture portions of the event. I'm not going to go into specifics actually of what we saw, and we're still collecting, we're still reviewing. We expect a lot more to come out of the video surveillance. And again, I can't stress enough how important it is for people that have captured video of this event to share it with us.
And then one last question, there's a bicycle group that says they're gonna avoid Rotary Park now because of crime. I guess, how would you guys respond to those concerns?
Well, it's a concern, and it's not an invalid concern. But I can tell you that I want to assure everybody in the city of Lansing that we are stepping up our enforcement. My priority is to make sure that this city is safe, and that's my responsibility. And we will be working day and night. All of our officers, our detectives, our violent crime initiative folks, our partnerships with the state police, the FBI, ATF, we are all in on this, and we will make this city safe so that groups like that feel safe to ride their bikes down the river trail and be at the parks.
Let me jump in. I would encourage them not to be at the park at 3 in the morning. Rotary Park is a wonderful place. It's somewhere that I go all the time. You go to Lansing Shuffle and have a meal and sit down at Rotary Park. I go there if I just need some time to clear my head. It's downtown. Rotary Park is a wonderful place. This one 3 a.m. incident doesn't make the park unsafe. That park is safe. That park has a lot of people there. So for this bicycle group or anyone else, I would encourage you not to be there at 2:50 a.m. Don't be there after midnight. But before that, there is a ton of things going on. We have concerts. We have incredible food. We have programming. There's lots of things going on. And I will tell everybody, Lansing is safe. This is not something that should tell people to stay away. These are incidents that have happened all over the country, and it's a terrible incident, and we will take steps to stop these things from happening. But Lansing is safe, and don't be there at 3 a.m. That's what I would say. But come when you're supposed to, and it's a lot of fun, it's enjoyable, it's an amenity, and it's something that we are very proud of.
Yeah, and I would add to that this doesn't define Lansing or our parks. I mean, we have a very great park system and many, many parks in the city. One incident like this happened to be at a park doesn't mean that our city parks are unsafe, especially that one. Any other questions? Yes?
Are all the victims Lansing School District students?
Not all of them.
Do you know which schools they attended?
We do, but we're not going to get
We're not
into
gonna
that right
speak to
now. We're not going to talk about the schools.
What's the proportion of the number of police officers you have versus the population in Lansing?
We'll get
How many police officers do you have staffed?
So we are funded for 212 sworn officers, and we are at 193 currently. But we are working very hard, and the mayor has approved above and beyond that number, just to alleviate the problem of retirements and injuries and stuff like that, so that we're fully staffed to that 212 number at any given time throughout the year.
And we've budgeted for another 15.
Correct.
We have budgeted for another 15 officers should the House version of the public safety revenue sharing be enacted into law. And with those 15 officers, again, we've got officers right now in academy that we have sponsored. We have taken every step to be fully staffed. Again, even front loading, going above the 212, because if you go above 212, then when people retire, you can sink those people in. So we have taken every step between our HR and our police to make sure we can have as many police officers as we can afford. And again, we would be able to afford 15 more, not including potential, civilians or others to review cameras for a real-time crime center, not including the funding for violence intervention and for advanced peace and for all these other things. So again, we're looking to the state and the legislature to pass those dollars, but until then, we are funded for 212, and we are doing everything we can to get up to that number and higher, knowing that we will have retirements coming up. And the population is about 113,000.
The extra patrols, do you anticipate them lasting through July 4th? Beyond that, how long do you expect these extra patrols to be around?
They'll be throughout the summer. I don't have an end date, but I wanted to make sure that we have enough out there, being very visible, out at a lot of the outdoor events, the gatherings that we have, the legitimate gatherings that we have, to give that sense of safety out there so that they can be seen.
You know, we've heard of shootings happening on holidays like Memorial Day. People are going to want to come out July 4th, kind of the same thing, large gathering. What do you tell people who are kind of seeing this fresh in their mind? Maybe they don't want to go out. Maybe they don't want to get out there and
Well,
Rotary Park.
again, the city, this is an isolated incident. This happens everywhere in this country. I don't want anybody to feel unsafe to be able to go out and enjoy their time, enjoy the options that the city of Lansing provides them. This is not a time to live in fear. This is a time to enjoy yourself, especially at events such as the 4th of July and the parades and everything else that we have here in the city of Lansing. This is my job. This is what I do. We will be there to make sure that everything goes smoothly and safe. And on top of that, based on what I'm telling you and what we've told you here, that we'll have additional resources out there to make sure that everybody feels safe and has a good time at these events.
So again, July 4th, don't be out at 3 a.m. That doesn't, the closure of the parks and the curfew and all that doesn't end on July 4th. That continues. So July 4th, come out for our parade. July 4th, come to Riverfront Park and check out an incredible concert. Check out our fireworks, which will go off at, 10 or 10:15, somewhere around there. And then go home. That's the answer. We are safe. We are ready. We understand that people are coming, and we welcome people. There's no lug nuts game this year, sorry. But we will have fun and exciting activities. And then when we hit around midnight, you can go home, because don't be out at 3 a.m. because no good will come of that. And that's the answer. We are safe. Just, make your way home after midnight, and you'll be fine.
I'm wondering if any of you guys can talk about the role, if any, that social media might have played in this incident, either in the initial social gathering that happened before the shooting, or as a means of communication between suspects, gang members, whatever.
Social media plays a huge part in this. We know that, we track that, because at any given time, that group of people can be notified that they're moving or they're meeting up at a spot. And then once that happens, whoever the other side of that coin is knows where they're going. And it's very quick, it's very instant, and that is absolutely, we know absolutely that many of these feuds are based off of social media, comments and threats and beefs, or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of tough guys and tough girls out there that want to use social media to prove a point and say their piece. But then they escalate into situations like this, unfortunately. And we all know that youth have no forward thought and no sense of accountability or consequence. And everybody, it's too easy to get a gun these days. And melt those two together, and here we have these shootings that happen with our young adults. One more?
Since the victims were younger, will you be having more police presence at the high schools? Will you all be going there to talk to people who may have been there during the time of the event? Or what would that look like in terms of the school?
Well, we always have a presence at the high schools. We are always there. We're very involved in the high schools. We're very involved in our schools in general, Lansing School District. Superintendent is very supportive of us being within the schools, and so is their board. Will we have some involvement based on this because there were some younger adults involved? We will, and we'll be there to make sure that there's no, there's some disruption if there's any retaliation thought or anything like that. But yeah, we're always there, but we will be there a little bit more.
Well, and it's important to point out, our high schools are safe. In terms of conversations, absolutely, it's important to have conversations. But, kids are affected by this, right? I've got 2 kids, one that graduated from Everett, one that will graduate from Everett in a week and a half. And they feel safe, and we feel absolutely fine having them go to our schools, whether it would be Lansing schools or Waverly schools or Holt or anywhere else. So there definitely will be conversations, and I know our superintendent is very concerned about the mental health of our students. A young person died, and that is terrible and tragic and will have an impact. So we know that has an impact on our youth, and our superintendent and our school board, they are 100% involved, 100% supportive, as are the principals and the teachers. Again, as a dad at Everett, I can tell you this personally. So, the conversations will continue, and we certainly want to make sure that we have presence as requested in the schools, in the high schools, but I'm less worried about problems than I am about the impact on youth in Lansing, Waverly, Holt, Okemos, Hazlet, DeWitt, all the school districts in the area. All right, thank you, everybody.
One more?
Yeah, on the ordinance, the curfew ordinance,
Yes.
can you just clarify if that's for youth, if they just flat out can't, under 16 can't be out after 6, I think it's at 6 PM, or is it if they have a, parent or guardian with them that?
So there are some exceptions. 13 and under, it's 10 o'clock, 10 PM. 16 to 13, it's midnight. There are exceptions with a legal guardian, school event, work, so forth. But obviously, that's part of our job, is to determine whether or not that's a legitimate exemption, so.
We can get you the ordinance.
Yes.
It's, actually, I have it written down. It's 650.01 is our curfew ordinance. So there are exceptions for, like you said, if you're with a parent, if you're on the sidewalk of your residence, or the neighbors, so long as the neighbor doesn't object, returning home by direct route from school activity. Again, there are a variety of exceptions that are common sense exceptions, but there's not an exception to being at a park at 3 AM.
For any additional questions and any spellings or anything like that, please contact Jordan Galkus, and she will get you that information. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.